that was my first, that was before I ever became a beekeeper. I've been teaching for over 20 years, and I taught lots of science, okay? So I grew up on a farm, so I've always been interested in nature. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, my husband and I decided that we wanted to learn more about bees. So just like when you guys go do elms, we started researching to see what it would mean to be a beekeeper. So we researched it for about a year, and we went to meetings and learned about being a beekeeper. And so 4 or 5 years ago, we went from having 1 hive to about 7 hives to about 20 hives, and now we have about 40 hives. So it's become a business. It's not just something we do in our backyard. And some people do that. They'll have 1 or 2 hives. So so that's why if you were a beekeeper, to go out and work with your bees, you would never wear a dress, okay? This is my teacher garb. And so after I leave here today, I'm going to go and do some things with teachers and with students. And I travel to different schools. You guys have probably seen me on campus before, once in a while. So I come and I work with teachers and I work with students. And now what I do, instead of having my own 5th grade classroom, because I taught 5th grade for many years, I now go around and to different schools and work with lots of 5th grade, kinder, and all different grades here in McKinney, and work with science and social studies and implementing the engaged learning model, which you guys have been learning about. So that's a little bit about me. So back to the bees. So we have a business, and it's called P&L Apiaries. And so I wrote some of the words I'm going to say today. I'll write down so you guys can look back at it. But an apiary is a place where you keep bees. So if you hear the word bee yard or apiary, that's like a place where all of the bee hives are. And so that might be a new word for you. It's kind of a cool word. And I'm going to talk about what I do when I'm taking care of bees. I'm going to tell a little bit about the life cycle of a bee, because I know 5th graders, you guys have been learning about insect metamorphosis, correct? Have you started your research on that? Okay. So just know I'm going to be sharing about the bee life cycle of the bee, and because I am a school teacher, I'm going to ask you a little question in the quiz to see what you think about bee insect metamorphosis. So be listening. I know one question I'm going to ask you is, do they do complete or incomplete? You know what I'm talking about when I ask you that? Okay, so be listening for the stages, and you have to figure out, is it complete or incomplete? I'm sure you will figure it out very quickly. So some of the stuff I have here is, this is what they call a hive body. How many of you have ever seen at least a picture of a beehive? Okay, does it look like this? Not necessarily. It looks like a piece of it, right? Okay, so if I had the whole beehive here, I might have 2 of these on top of each other, and then I might have 3 smaller ones on top. Okay, so it's too big to bring you the whole beehive. And plus my beehives have live bees in them, right? So this is a piece of it that I've got the bees out of, because I don't want them to sting you today. And I want to show you some cool stuff that are in this beehive. If you ever have an opportunity to get dressed up in protection gear and go and observe in a hive that actually has bees in it, and look at it with the bees, it's very cool. So if you ever have that opportunity, hold that question, okay? Don't forget it, baby. Go do that, unless you're allergic to them, okay? But go do it, because it's kind of scary. The first time I looked in there, and all like thousands of bees. A small hive has 3,000 bees. That's a very small hive. Like they would barely fill this. So when I have a hive that's about 10 high, there's probably a billion bees there, okay? So it's kind of scary when you look in there the first time, because you realize how many bees are there and how many stingers they could sting you. But really, they're not there to sting you, okay? They're there to take care of their babies that they're producing all the time, and they're there to make honey for them. Honey's not for us, right? It's for them. That's what they eat. And what we do is we go rob their honey. So we have to be careful not to take too much, or we can starve out a hive really easily. So we go and we take the extra, and they're not happy about that at all. So that's when you can easily get stung, because you're robbing their food. Like somebody came into your house and robbed your pantry, you wouldn't be very happy about that, because you have to work extra hard to replenish it. But that's what they do. I know sometimes we think, oh, thank you, bees, for making that honey for us. But they're not worried about us. And if they sting you, it's because they feel like you're going to hurt them. Kind of like snakes, right? You leave them alone, they're not going to bite you. But if you go scare them, they're protecting themselves. So that's what bees do. So this is where they live. This is called a hive body, because it's big and tall. And this is where the bees would live. And inside each hive, there's one queen, okay? And the queen lays all the eggs for the whole hive. And all the other bees are worker bees. And I have a hive tool that I use to pull out these. Sometimes I didn't bring today, so I'm going to have to use my hands. But when you're working with the bees, you would always have your face covered. There's some pictures I brought, and some people just cover their face. I cover my whole body, okay? There's not one piece of me that's not covered, right? Even if I didn't have these straps on, I would be taping my wrists here. And for my jeans, if I didn't have them tucked in my boots, I would put a piece of tape around them. Because the last thing you want when you're working with the bees is to have a bee get up your pant leg, right? And it will sting you all the way up your leg. You think I know how? And I know that because it's done that to me. And you're like, trying to swat it and get it out of there. And what you don't want to do is, expose any more of your skin. So I cover everything. You'll see pictures like this one, and I'm going to leave these for the 5th grade, and you can share with kindergarten. See this gentleman? He has his arms exposed, doesn't he? Okay, but he's worked with bees enough. He's probably got stung a couple times. And if you're peaceful when you're working with the bees and not real loud, they usually don't bother you. Okay, but I'm not that brave. I keep covered just in case there's some mean bees out there. I like keeping covered. That's my preference. So that's why Kate brought this to show you what I wear. So within a hive, there's one queen, and she lays all the eggs. And I brought several different pieces of, these are called frames, and this is where the bees work and work and work, and they make beeswax, right? You guys have heard of beeswax?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. The bees make all wax. Right? As you study about bees, I want you to be thinking about if you would want to be a bee. How many of you seen that cartoon movie? It's kind of old now, about the bees. Yeah. It's really true. They each have jobs. Okay? And a life cycle of a bee is only 45 days. So think about that. Would you want to be a bee? And they never sleep. They work all the time. Okay? So from the minute that they're born to the 45th day of their life, they work. That's all they do. And their job is to take care of, protect the queen, and take care of the hive, and produce the food. We'll talk about that in a minute. Like if you were 1 week old, this would be your job. If you were 2 weeks old, this would be your job. You kind of get different jobs as you get a little bit older, right? So in a frame, this is what it starts out with if you provide something for them. In the wild, you guys have probably seen this. How many of you, Winnie the Pooh's kind of old, remember Winnie the Pooh's always trying to steal the honey? You know what I'm talking about? Little bear. And he sees the swarm up in the tree, and sometimes they chase him away from the honey. So in the wild, this is what they look like. Okay? This is a bee swarm up in a tree. And I have a video I put on the Blend Space that Miss Saylor's going to show you, and it shows my husband. We went and got a swarm, and we put them in a box like this. Okay? So I could go get the honey out of the tree like Winnie the Pooh, but it's hard, and it's in the tree. Okay? So that's why beekeepers, they take bees out of the wild, or they buy a new queen, and they put them in a box like this, because it's easier to get the honey from this than it is out of the tree. Wouldn't you agree? So we control the environment so we can get to the bees and we can get to the honey. This is what they would look like in the wild. So this is a frame that a beekeeper puts in here, and the bees start building the wax. And there's worker bees, thousands of them. All of the worker bees are girls. Okay? There's also boy bees in there, but their only job is to fly around and eat and help produce more bees. They don't do any of the wax. They don't do any of the work. They're just hanging out. And the way you can tell that they're called drones, and the way you can tell a drone is they're big. They have a really big eye. They have a really big body. So as you're looking around and learning more about bees, and you see one in your backyard, they have really big eyes, and they're really fat, not long, but fat. And you're like, man, that looks like a really big honeybee. It's probably a boy bee. Okay? And then the queen, and I'm going to show you some pictures of her. She's really cool. She's one of the biggest bees in the hive. She's long and thin, and she lives the longest than any bees. Because when a queen egg is laid, they feed it special, the workers feed it special jelly. It's called royal jelly. How many of you have ever heard of royal jelly? A lot of you have, okay? There really is. They save it over in a place in the hive, and when they need a new queen, somehow they know. That's what's really cool. It's instinctive. You guys, have you learned about instincts? The bees just know, hey, we need to feed that new larva special royal jelly. And that allows her to live up to 18 months to 3 years. Remember how long did I say the other bees could live? Okay, so you have to think, would I want to be a worker bee? Would I want to be a drone bee? Or would I want to be a queen bee? But here's what the queen does all day long, and she never sleeps. She lays eggs. She can lay 18,000, check that number on you researchers. I think it's up to 18,000 eggs a day. Like, she's busy. And that's all she does. And all the worker bees, they're called her attendants. So if you see a queen, she'll have all these bees all over her and around her. They take care of her. She doesn't have to feed herself or anything. They're constantly feeding her. They're constantly cleaning her. They're constantly taking care of her. Because if she dies, no eggs get laid. No, after 45 days, what happens to all the worker bees? Dead if there's no new worker bees, and the hive dies. So the bees are gone. What can happen if the queen dies and the workers realize, no one's the queen anymore? Sometimes they'll swarm and they'll leave a hive and they'll try to find another hive. But sometimes those other bees, when they're trying to get into their hive, they'll fight them off. Okay, because they'll think, hey, they're coming to steal our honey and we don't want them here. So there'll be a fight, and they'll sting, and they'll kill each other. Okay, so if you start losing a hive like that as a beekeeper, then I know I need to get a new queen in there quickly. And I can go steal a queen egg out of another hive and put that in there, or there's businesses around you can order a queen and put it in there. So as a hive keeper, or a beekeeper, that's one thing when I look in a hive, make sure my queen's healthy. And I check and make sure she's in there, and I check and make sure there's eggs. All right, let me show you, let me go back to this. This is kind of cool. So this is what a plain frame, there's no beeswax on this yet for them to lay their eggs. So you put that in there, and the bees start, and I'm going to leave all this here, because it's really cool to touch, but be careful when you touch it, because it's really soft. You can squish it down. But this is what it looks when they start building. You see the difference? It's called pulling the wax. They start doing that because they're going to lay their eggs in there, and they're going to put their honey in there and cap it off. Kind of like their pantry, right? Or their food. Also, pollen. Somebody in here said, I don't know if she's still in here, but she said one time she tasted honey pollen, bee pollen. So they also put pollen in here, and that's like their protein. So they eat that off of the flowers. It's where they get the nectar and the pollen. And you know how many of you hear about protein bars and make sure you're strong and all that, okay? So pollen for bees are protein, so they need to have that in there as well. Okay, check this out. Looks a little bit different. What do you think the difference between this comb and this comb might be? Okay, he said this one has eggs, this one doesn't. What makes you think it has eggs? Okay, there's some things in the comb. What?
I think that it's blacker than that one.
It's darker. Okay.
There's more wax in it.
There's more wax.
I'm guessing that one's older than that one.
Yes. The older. That's like, all of those things are correct. You can actually see where there's still some capped something in there. If we got a little tool or pencil, there's some holes in there. Yeah, there's probably dead larvae in there. So anyway, this is old, okay? And as a beekeeper, I would probably take this out and melt it down and reuse it, because the older the comb gets, the easier it is for disease to get in there. The easier it is for insects that come in and want to hurt the hive. So the older it is, it's harder for the bees to keep it clean. But that's what the bees do. Some of their job is just to keep cleaning the hive up all the time. But usually if a hive is probably about 4 or 5 years old, Most of the comb will look about this dark. This comb could have come from a hive that is 50 years old. Okay. And it still can produce good honey, it's just we want to make sure that the bees stay healthy. And so we want their environment to be clean. It'd be like your bedroom getting really dirty, right? After 50 years, you might need to repaint or something like that, maybe before that. So I brought lots of samples of comb in here, so feel free to pull those out. Kindergartner, sorry, I don't know how much hands-on you're gonna get on the hive, but I know fifth grade will have it for a while, so there's different ages. Also on the top, this is really cool. On the top of some of it, you'll see it, it's messy. And you can see my hood's pretty messy, dirty, and my gloves too. But see that on the top here? That stuff is called propolis. And what that is, in people terms, is like insulation, okay? So it's like bee gum, kind of, and it's real sticky. When you get to touch it, you can feel it. And when I'll put another box on top of this, the bees will get busy and they will start sealing the hive to keep the wind out, the cold out. They have to keep the hive a certain temperature, and they do that by their wings. It's kind of like their air conditioner and their heater, and they can adjust their wing speed in order to keep things cool or hot, and they just sense instinctively again what temperature it is in there. Isn't that cool? They kind of have a built-in temperature and they keep it that way. But the propolis is like their seal. So if I had another hive on top of this, I would have to use a special tool and pry it open. Okay, and when I get in a hive, it always stresses the bees because it's kind of like somebody coming and taking the roof off your house, right? Prying the nails off and looking inside your house. How would you like that? It'd be a little invasive, right?
It would be like spying.
It would be like spying. And so what I've done is I've ripped up their seal and I've messed with their honey. I may have knocked off some of the caps and messed things up. So the minute I put it back together, they have to go to extra work to seal it all back up and make it nice. So you try not to get in it too often. But the other cool thing about this propolis is it's supposed to have a lot of healing agents in it for humans. And it's real sticky, and I actually tried it out one time. I have to tell you, I had a sore on my arm, and it wouldn't heal. And so I peeled this off and stuck it on my arm. And it's also waterproof. And so even when I took a shower, it didn't come off. It just stuck to me. Like I had this big wart on me, right? And it was all black and gross looking. And I left it on there for like 3 days, took it off, and that wound had started healing. So almost anything that comes out of a beehive, whether it's honey or pollen, propolis, has a lot of good chemicals in it, natural chemicals from the bees that can help humans too. We're finding out it's very healthy for you. And I brought some of the honey and I'll give it to the sailor. I would love for you to all taste it, but some of you might have an allergy to it, so I wouldn't want any of you to get sick, so I can't give you honey. But honey has a lot of healthy agents in it, and it's a good thing to eat instead of sugar. Is it sweet? So like this morning I had some on my oatmeal. Instead of putting on white sugar, I put honey on it, and that was a lot more natural and better for my body. So think about using honey as sugar instead of that white sugar that we put on there. All right. The smoker, how's my time? I better hurry around. The smoker, I'm going to leave that with you. And this is what I use. I actually took a bee class and I had to learn how to make sure I could light it by myself. I had to learn how, all this stuff I'm telling you, I had to learn about it, and then I had to show my teacher that I knew what I was doing, so I knew how to take care of a hive. So we had to learn about it too. But you'll see there's some corn cobs in there, and you light this up and you pump it, and when you come up here, you'll smell some smoke on here, you'll smell some smoke on here. And what this does is it helps calm the bees down. Okay, it kind of puts it kind of puts them to sleep and kind of puts a shield between me and them.
So
Because
it
when
won't sting you?
hopefully, that's the plan, right? Hopefully that's why it's doing that. And it calms them down, okay? So, but I have seen hives not like the smoker. So if I start smoking them and I can hear they're really loud and buzzing because they're angry and they're like, somebody's in our house and they're thinking, they need to get rid of me by stinging me. And so I, spray it and calm it down. Sometimes they get quieter. If they get louder, I stop, because what I'm doing is I'm making them matter. So some hives like the smoke, some don't. So you have to just kind of listen to your bee and pay attention. All right, so I brought the smoker, so you could do that. And I'm gonna leave my jacket if you wanna try it on. But I also brought one that's smaller. And I think you guys had this last year, right? So, and this one actually has pants, so it's more you guys' size. And a little jacket, and you can put this on. And this is my nephew's. He's about 7 years old, and he lives in New Mexico. And he likes to come in the summer and visit, and he likes bees. So my husband and I bought him a little outfit, so when we're out working the bees, he can be covered as well. So I brought that. I know some of you may fit in it, some of you may not, but I wanted to leave that for you. And let me talk a little bit about bee metamorphosis, and then I'm going to stop. So I brought a poster here, and this shows the life cycle of a bee, which is pretty fascinating. And I was telling you about the queens. Okay, see how much longer they are? And here's the worker, they're the smaller ones, and then see this drone with the big old eyes? I'm telling you about his big eyes, big body, that's how you can tell the difference. Everything on him is just bigger, all right? And then this is a neat little side view of showing where the queen lays the egg in there. And then this shows the different stages where the egg comes out, and it's a larva, and then it has a pupa, and a cocoon, and then it comes out, and it's an adult bee, okay? And here's a really neat diagram of the days and what the workers do. Remember me telling you that they have different jobs? So when they come out, they're kind of like the janitors, they're the cleaners. So your first week as a bee, you're just gonna be kind of cleaning up the hive and taking care of everything. And then the next stage is as you get older, I'm just gonna say by weeks because that's easier, it might not be perfectly 7 days. And then you start becoming kind of like the person that brings the groceries in, not brings feeds everybody. So you start feeding the babies, you start feeding things, and then the newbies get to be the cleaners of the hive. And then, let me see. Oh, and then as you get, like say your third week of your life, then you get to actually start building some of the comb. All right, so you become the builder of the comb. And then the very last thing you get to do is you get to be a field bee. What do you think a field bee gets to do?
Get the honey.
Get the honey. You get to leave the hive and you go out and you're a gatherer. And that's what you do all day long, is you go out and you find them. And it's really cool how they communicate. They use sound, but they also use dancing. And if you get on YouTube, you'll see some of this. And the bees will go out and they'll search for flowers, for a resource. And then when they find a good one, they'll come back. And they'll go in the front of the hive, and there's usually a hole in the bottom here when you have them all together. And they'll dance in front of there, or they'll go inside and they'll dance like on top of each other, and that's how they communicate. And depending on the way they dance and move their legs, and I don't know, I'm not a bee, so I don't know how they do it, but they tell each other where the flowers are. And then they leave the hive and they go there. It's like when they come out of the hive, they have this built-in GPS, and they know that's where you go. So you can watch them, and they'll go in and out, in and out, in and out. They'll come back, communicate, and you can see them change, and they'll head that way. It's pretty cool, pretty neat. And you can hear them, kind of change the way they buzz towards each other. You have to listen really carefully. So it's kind of neat. And then into the life cycle, and then the new ones that are coming on take over. All right? So remember my question about bee metamorphosis, complete or incomplete? Complete, why? Because there's 4 stages, all right? And the incomplete has how many? 3. And what one is it missing? It always has a what? Starts with the egg.
Then that shows the stages.
Yeah, this is stages of incomplete.
Egg, nymph, and adult.
That's right, so it's missing the larva stage. This doesn't have the cocoon. And there's, what is it, the pupa, what do we call it? There's cocoons and chrysalis, but it's the pupa.
Yeah, we're just using those 4 words.
Okay, I just want to use the word.
Yeah.
What 4th word do you use for that? A,
Larva and pupa.
pupa, because that's general, and then adult. Okay, so they do go through complete metamorphosis, and there's some pictures here. I'll leave some books. Okay, and there's some fiction and nonfiction. You know, Buzz the bee that's happy about flying. Okay, we've got a fictional book about bees, but it does tell you a little bit of facts. And then I've got some that tell you more about facts. I've got some posters I'm going to leave you with information on the back to help you with your research. I sent a blend space, like I said, to Miss Saylor, and some of those things on there I got off the internet. You know, diagrams, resources, things like that. But there are a couple of videos on there that I'm in or my husband's in to teach you some other things about our bees, so you can see them there. All right, Miss Saylor, did I
You
anything specific?
were
You
fabulous.
were fabulous.
Okay,
Thank
all
you
right,
for
so do you have a
inviting
few
me.
minutes for questions and
Yes.
answers? Okay, all right, we're just gonna work across the room here. Yes, sir.
My next door neighbor in Appleton, he was a beekeeper. And
Okay.
I got to wear that suit, and I saw like a lot of bees in that.
So you got to begin. Was it scary kind of at first? No, it was fine, you were ready, you were up for the challenge. Okay, awesome, thank you for sharing that. It was pretty neat, but
All the questions.
do you think you might want to do a beak or something?
Yeah.
Maybe, okay.
How do you get a new queen when that queen dies?
Good question. The queen actually lays, when she senses that she needs to leave the hive and take some of the bees because it's getting too crowded, go to a new hive and leave some here. Or if she knows that she's not gonna live much longer, she starts laying eggs in a special cell in there, special in the comb, and they start feeding it, the workers start feeding it that royal jelly. And then by the time she's gone, there'll be a new queen that comes out. She usually lays 4 or 5, because what if one doesn't go through the whole metamorphosis and dies? Then it's without a hive. So, and here's the deal with 4 or 5 queen cells in the hive, the first one out's the winner, right? So the first queen comes out, and what she does, this is kind of neat, she goes around and she kills the other queens before they come out. Okay? Or if they come out at the same time, there's a fight. So it is survival of the fittest, because there can only be one queen in the hive. Yes.
When you first started your business, did you ever get stung really badly?
It took me about a year before I got stung because I always covered myself really well, and then I got a little bit braver. But when you say really bad,
Well, not really bad, but
Yeah.
like,
painful, yes, it's always painful. It's always painful. And the first time I got stung, in fact, for some reason they like to sting me on my legs, but I'm usually wearing jeans, so I'd like to get pants that are loose, that are hanging on me like that, so if they try to sting through, it's just air there, so it's probably because I have my jeans on. But then I've been stung on my hands too, and that hurts, because your hands will put a lot of extra fat on.
Is it true when a bee dies, that if they sting someone, a bee will die?
That's a good question, because I wanted to cover that. And this is interesting. I always heard, and it's true, when a bee stings you, that's the last thing it does. So that's your justification, right? Because its stinger comes out and it dies. And if the bee does sting you, check and make sure that the stinger is not in you, like a little thorn, because it will keep pumping that poison into you. That's why it's so itchy. It's pumping the little bee venom in you, okay? So make sure you get tweezers and pull it out, or you can get take sticky tape or something and pull it out, because it's like a little cactus splinter. Always check and make sure you get it out, or it'll just keep getting worse. But here's the cool thing. When I started learning about bees, I'm like, how can they sting other bees and protect their honey and not die? So I did some research, and they only die if they sting mammals. So they can sting other insects and protect themselves and not lose their stinger. But if they sting us, or a skunk, which, there's different animals that like to try to get in there, bears, try to get their honey. If they sting a mammal, I don't know if it's why, because of their skin or what, their stinger comes off and they'll die. So it's kind of interesting.
I actually now have 3 questions.
Okay.
One, as you said, if you leave the stinger inside of you, how do you know if you've gotten stung by a bee and you don't know there's a stinger in you? The more poison it pumps into you, then can you die from that?
No, it's not that big. Now, if you were stung by hundreds of bees,
Oh,
it could. You will know, if you don't know that stinger's in you, you're lucky, that means you don't have you can handle a lot of pain, but you're gonna feel it. Just like when you go to the doctor and if you have to get a shot, you're gonna feel a sting. And some people, it may hurt worse than others, but you'll feel something there. And if the stinger isn't there, it might just be a sting, and then you're like, ow, that hurt, and you kind of go on like a mosquito bite, right? Most of the time, it's not that like that though. Usually they put a poison there, and then you itch it, and it gets itchier, and it raises, a bump raises there. And if there's a stinger still in there, it will keep itching, and you'll usually feel a little bump, like a little splinter in there.
And yeah, I already know that bees can sting, but can they bite? They don't bite at all. And the last thing is the bees get the eggs, they get their bee wax, they get the pollen, they get the honey. What do you get out of it?
What do I get out of it? I can rob there. It's called robin there, and then we do it. You can do it twice a year. You usually let them. Right now, it's coming on, and we're getting ready to have what they call a honey flow. So as the flowers come out, the bees, they're getting more and more bees are heading out, and because they're going to get. And I have a really cool picture. I know you guys learned about pollination, and you can see where the bee, when they land on the flower, it sticks to their legs, and that's how they can pollinate. And then they're also gathering the nectar. But what I get out of it is in the fall, and right now I just harvest once a year. In August, we go in and we take the extra honey from it, and then we eat it. That's an advantage, right? But because we have so many, we can turn around and sell it, so it becomes a business. So I get money for it. Okay, does that answer your question?
Which bee would you call more aggressive? I'd like the workers and the drones.
That's a good question. I would think that they're the workers that are the protectors of the hive, because at one point that's their job. And they'll actually sit out in front of the hive and kind of protect it. They're probably gonna, I would say they're the most aggressive.
So the females.
The worker female bees, and they don't lay eggs. The queens could get aggressive, but I don't know if it's more towards me. I don't know, it'd be something to research a little bit more on. But just my experience in it is probably the worker bees that are protector bees.
Could the queen actually sting a mammal, or would the workers not let it so it would die?
If she's in the hive, she's pretty protected. But she does go out for a flight once after she's hatched out of her. She goes for a flight, and then she comes back in, and that's the only time she ever leaves the hive. So if that queen gets eaten by a bird, or she has to protect herself and sting a mammal, she could die, and that would not be good for the hive. I don't know if attendants. This is something I just thought of. I don't know if attendants go with her when she does her flight. I'm guessing not, but maybe. That's something I'd have to research a little bit on. Okay, so yes, she is in danger when she's out of the hive.
How come whenever I watch like these videos, how come honey badgers don't really get affected by bee stings?
Research that, because I don't know. Somebody else asked me that. And maybe they do get stung, but maybe the way that they're made, maybe their adaptation is that they have a thicker protection or something, so they can handle more bee stings. Because the bees are stinging them. They are trying to.
But what I can see is I can see the bee stinging them twice in a row. Like I can see one bee sting on him
And like a video.
yeah.
And it might be that their fur or skin or whatever, maybe that where the bees can't get into them. I don't know. I'm kind of curious, why is it even called a honey badger? Is it because they love honey?
They steal the
Yeah, but other things do too. I don't know. I'd have to research that a little bit. But that's a good question. Look and see, because I know you guys have talked and learned about adaptations of animals, right? So they may just have a special covering that protects them all from the bees. I'm not sure about that.
Okay, this is our last question, and then I'll make a Padlet where you can add more questions,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
Mrs. Payne could maybe answer them on the
Absolutely.
Padlet.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question.
I'm taking that one right back here. Sorry. Yes. The young lady with the braids.
do you know how they make the royal jelly?
How they make their what?
The royal jelly?
I don't know how they do that. Yeah. I'm not sure, I'm not exactly sure what it's made of, but some people actually harvest the royal jelly from the hive and they sell it. And it's expensive and people will use it. eat it. Women put it on their skin or their faces because it's supposed to make your skin younger and healthier and that sort of thing. But if you steal it from the hive, who's missing out? The queen. Okay, so just like I can't take too much honey, so if I take too much honey in August and there's not flowers in December, I can starve them out, right? So I have to steal the honey and make sure they have enough time, or I leave enough honey in there that they have enough to survive through the winter when there's not many flowers out. So you can't steal all their honey, or you're going to end up killing them. So you can't take all their royal jelly, you can't take all their protein, because some people harvest protein from here and eat that. Some people harvest comb and make candles, beeswax candles, or beeswax. We get the beesburg chapstick. Any of you guys use that? Okay, there's honey and there's comb in that, but you can't take all their stuff or you'll end up killing them. All right.
Okay, what do we say?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting me talk. Hopefully I answered some of your questions. Maybe inspired some of you to think about being a beekeeper. And you don't have to be an adult to be a beekeeper. Okay, you can talk to your parents and you can say, hey, I'd like to learn more about this. There is a Collin County Beekeeper Association, so there's a group that meets once a month. And they actually have a program where teenagers are the main beekeeper. They're the ones that take care of the hive, that sort of thing. And they're always out there teaching other people about bees. So you can be a beekeeper as a student, right? Because it's not my main job, is it? Okay, so you can be a student, or be a business person, or be a teacher, and you can still have hives. I wouldn't suggest that you have 40 hives and work full-time doing something else, because that's a lot of management, unless you had helpers, right? And some, I didn't talk, Ms. Saylor, about how the bees help the environment.
Oh, yeah.
So make sure you research that, because bees are very helpful to the environment. And the bee population, on that blend space, you'll see a graph, is going down, down, down. What in our environment do you think is causing the bee population, and insect population to go down?
Like pollution.
Pollution. And what do we do when we see bees in our backyard? Do we say, come on in? What do we usually do?
We kill them.
We kill them. We spray them with insecticides. The farmers, the corn, the cotton, all of the vegetables and fruits we eat have to be pollinated by insects, and bees are very important. In fact, almonds, how many of you eat almonds? The only thing that pollinates almonds, if I'm correct about this, are bees. So if we lose all our bees, we're not going to have that. So we're working on making a healthier environment for the bees. If you have a bee swarm show up in your backyard, instead of killing it, call the county, call a number, have your parents call Collin County Association, and they'll call somebody like me, and they'll come out and get the bees from your backyard that you don't want. We'll put them in a hive, and we'll keep them safe, and then they can still keep helping the environment, and that keeps you safe too, because not everybody wants bees in their backyard, right? So there's ways that we can help supply more bees because they are good for our environment. So do some more research on that, because they're very, very important.